Meeting order, it's 2:11.
Okay, I got my notebook here.
No introductions necessary. We know each other quite well. So any self-identification of members, hence Dave?
No, I just rotated off the Brighton Center board. So
Okay.
free and clear.
We'll miss that.
Yeah,
Okay, in the packet that Tara sent out were the meeting minutes from our April 21st. Any questions or clarifications on that?
None for me. I'm okay.
Okay. Then can I get a motion to approve them?
So move.
Nick for a motion. And second?
Dave?
Dave for a second. All right. Then we'll move on to the next order of business, which is the revision to our bylaws. And just background here as a reminder, there was initially questions about whether we needed business makeup, like a certain percentage of business members to be on the standing committees. And we pushed back saying that's not how we read that, but then Tara found that we actually had local bylaws that did require it, which we believed was unnecessary and not flexible enough for us. So she's gone ahead and made the red lines and highlights of those changes. So on page 9 of your packet, we'll just go through those kind of one by one here. Page 9, that's the ability to make sure we can leverage video conferencing so we're not absent. So video and audio.
Yes. So I heard from this group that we still feel strongly that people should be joining via being able to see the video as well as the audio. So I did not, I didn't take out a couple people have kind of said, oh, is video really necessary? We occasionally have, someone doesn't have access to a camera or something of that sort. But I felt like the feedback that I was hearing from the group is that we feel pretty strongly that video presence is really part of what allows somebody to really be actively involved while they're in the meeting. And so I wanted to make sure that we left that in based on that feedback that I was hearing from the board. But I did take out the component that actually currently in the bylaws requires someone who's joining by video to get the approval of the chair before doing so. And I'm sure, and maybe even as recently as February, that made a ton of sense. But at this point, everyone's doing it, and it would be cumbersome to follow that rule.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really agree.
I don't know if we're going too far, but should we show that if there's a video conference that requires a password or entry in or anything to that point? Or will that be more from a bigger discussion than MBO?
I don't know if I'd want to put that in the bylaws, Dave, because technology is going to change what features and what security protocols make the most sense. If anything, we may want to just have generic language, Tara, about that the point of video or something to the effect is that we have to authenticate that is the person attending. So we don't have that, we don't really explicitly state that, but something to the effect of when we try to look here how that's said. It's not really said anywhere. But to allow verification of the attendees.
Yeah, is the video conferencing application actually in the general WIB bylaw somewhere? Or is this the only place that?
This is the general, this is not just the MBO.
Okay, all right, fine. Then I think, John, what you're mentioning is makes good sense as far as making sure that we've got the right person.
Okay, so let me make sure that I'm capturing this the way that you intend. Something along the lines of, let's see, the purpose of video usage is to authenticate the identity of the board member during the course of the meeting.
So I'm thinking that we have this in the absences section.
Well,
okay.
And that's
I see, we're encouraging them to attend in person, and this is in lieu of in-person attendance. Okay, that's all right. And we're not really dealing with excused and unexcused absences. I mean, if you're not there, you're not there.
Right.
We need to keep special double secret probation notes on people.
Yeah.
So yeah, if a member is unable to attend in person, then the member can attend the meeting and vote via utilization video presence with audio capabilities. I would then just say in order for the committee chair to verify identification or authenticate identification.
Okay.
So this basically then means that you couldn't have somebody call in on a teleconference line only.
They could, but they wouldn't then be able to vote, or they would not count towards quorum.
Okay.
And that's a good point, is that, you know, if somebody just did not have that capability, we don't want to discourage them from at least, and I would say that's for the public as well. I mean, technically these are open meetings, and we've been putting out on our website the full Zoom link, because if somebody, you know, wanted to come, we have the responsibility that we have to make that available. And you could do that by phone.
That's true. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what the co-op does is, in this case, rather than have everybody on the Zoom conference, they broadcast on a YouTube channel, and it's a read-only type of channel.
Mhm.
Way that meets the open meeting request for the general public.
Yeah, there is a lot of, that is not as easy wise as you would think. We've been trying to do that, especially for the full web meetings. Actually, we've been broadcasting it to our Facebook account, because we think it just gets more, traffic. But frankly, it's, from a staffing standpoint, like for this meeting in particular, I'm recording it and I'll post it later to the Facebook page. But there's a lot of movement in us feeling like we're prepared to meet with you, and it is a lot to also be streaming and recording and, you know, sort of all these things. And so frankly, I would kind of rather let people know, if they wanted to join, that they can join via Zoom. You know, I can always mute them, and then just share it, if that's okay. It's a lot, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it doesn't work, sometimes it's very stressful. So, okay, so I have that phrase to then add into the end of the last sentence. So it will now read, if the member is unable to attend in person, then the member can attend the meeting and vote via utilization of a video presence with audio capabilities, in order for the committee chair to authenticate identification.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Great. Then the next, let's see. Okay, so if you scroll down to number F, standing committees, that is where I just took the recommendations that you, John, and Nick, and Dana had kind of all gone about via email, and where it says standing committees, all standing committees shall be constituted under the following, and I was just going to take out part A. So then that would be A.
And I think you can even get rid of the A, because there's no additional clauses. So just make that its own section.
Good point. Okay.
Okay.
One, and then I'm just going to make a note, take out lettering. Okay. Okay. And then I just wanted to note that the numbering or lettering, if you will, got a little haywire in the document a little further down. There's a section that is labeled capital letter G, individuals with disabilities. But it seems like it should be lowercase e instead, just with the flow of things. And so a few of the notes that you'll see in the packet that I sent were just me attempting to renumber it to make it flow with what seemed like would be the logical direction of the doc. It's not any change to the content.
Right, I follow that. It made sense. The
Okay.
question I have though is, if we don't have that committee, how does
Yeah.
that reconcile with part 2 of that section where it says the board shall have the following standing committees? So if you're going to lump in the Individuals with Disabilities Committee, that would imply we have to have that.
So that's a really interesting question. And actually, based on my reading of WIOA law, I think we're actually supposed to have that committee. So, you know, I don't know if we say, look, the needs of that group fall under our program and youth committee. Or I could leave it as part G, but actually have another heading that says optional additional committees or something like that, where it doesn't go straight into individuals with disabilities. It would have its new heading, and then have that name underneath it.
A part 3, and then that would be the.
Yeah, so I was thinking it would be under, like, if you wanted to differentiate between the actual existing standing committees and other ones, we could leave it at G, but give that G, instead of having it named individuals with disabilities, we could name it like, you know, potential or possible, or, you know, something sort of more future looking, like other committees that could be created, or something like that.
But I guess why would we not have this committee? I mean, that seems like a pretty important population segment to serve. I know the ad does serve the disabled.
We do.
So the question is there a reason we haven't done that, or is it just sort of because no one's driven it? I don't know. We've really never discussed it, so I was kind of surprised to see it's on here and that we've.
Yeah, I wish that I had more history about that, and I do not have it. I know that we tend to see program and youth as a bit of a catch-all in terms of populations that we might need to serve, but I certainly think that, you know, if this is something that we feel that we would like to create, you know, maybe we maybe we need to figure out what that would look like.
And the name Program and Youth Committee, where did that name come from? What does the program mean? Is that an us creation, or is that a?
That is an us creation.
Okay, because if you look at that one, it says Board for Adults, dislocated worker and youth program activity.
Yes.
I believe that's the right group for the work that we're talking about.
Yes.
So if we just change part I in section 2B to also reference individuals with disabilities, I would think we're capturing the right population there without making this document. You know, I don't think we really need another committee. We're already talking about how we have struggles getting committees together. Right. But I believe this would be a challenge for the board to launch it. And I would like to at least keep this in there rather than the options are to me, we modify the language to move it into program and youth, or we strike it entirely from this round of bylaws. So we're in compliance. But as soon as it's gone, it feels harder to add again.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I think rolling it into this committee makes sense. To answer your question, back a long time ago, there was a program committee and there was a separate youth committee. And the youth committee was very hard to populate. Impossible to get membership into that community, into that group. Mm-hmm. So it was rolled together, not quite a while ago, but from, you know, probably within the last 6 years, I guess.
Okay.
Okay. So I can add then the, here, sorry, I'm using two computers at once. So under 2B,
Aye.
to review and make funding recommendations to the board for adult dislocated worker.
Mhm.
And then individuals.
Youth and so the only
Then also part III, so part 3, for 2B part 3, it says relating to the provision of services to youth,
yeah, okay,
individual
so
disabilities, or adults. I mean, I don't know why that looks like we've merged some things, but
yeah,
didn't really merge them.
so in part I, those three categories, adult, dislocated worker, and youth, those are specific funding streams that we receive funding for. So you're going to see those again in the budget. We do not really receive specific funding for individuals with disabilities, but we do work a lot with them through our operator in terms of housing a number of programs for individuals with disabilities. And so I'm wondering if maybe that language works more in III, part 3, where we can specifically reference, it could even be to youth, people with disability, and individuals with disabilities, or we could make it a longer list of people that we serve. Because you could put veterans in that category as well, I would think, for example, as a group that we specifically have programming for, but we don't necessarily have a specific funding stream for them. But we do often, like we have a job fair coming up in July, it's specifically for veterans. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's my thinking about putting it in the third section versus the first section.
Well, if you have funding recommendations that are specific to WIOA, and those are the categories that relate back to that, that makes sense to keep that aligned, purposely aligned. And as that 2B part 3, I would see no reason why you couldn't just expand that to be inclusive of the populations that we feel are relevant and who we want to target in terms of serving. So I would just list those again, Tara.
Okay. Okay. So with that in mind, I could see it saying provide information and assist with planning, operational, and other issues related to the provision of services to adults, dislocated workers, youth, veterans, and individuals with disabilities.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm just going to write this down really quickly. We are recording this, so theoretically I could go back and listen, but.
Go grind some tape.
Yeah.
Like a pro football scout watching your video back. I could have run that meeting a little bit differently. See what you broke here? You should have gone that way. And
okay. Okay. All right. And then let's see. Oh, so the next section down, it's under G. So wait, so just to clarify, we're going to take the section about individuals with disabilities out because we're moving that. So that's going to be a cross out. Is that?
yes, that's right.
Okay. Okay. So right under that, and I'm a little lost in terms of what the number would be, but I guess that would now be the new G. The chairperson of the board may appoint ad hoc committees as necessary, which may include non-WIB members. And then it says,
Let me make a suggestion because these are like some hanging chads on this.
yeah.
So we have as the document stands now, we have two A, B, C, and D. I would go back and create an E and move this section about WIB members may serve on that whole paragraph that you've updated.
Yeah.
Because that's an operational requirement related to the committees in section 2.
Okay.
So lowercase e is that last paragraph with the teal highlight.
Yes.
And then section G will be called, or section G will say the chairperson of the board may appoint ad hoc committees. That sentence. So that'll be a standalone.
Okay, so the whole paragraph under that will be E. Does that sound right? Like the non-WIB members may serve?
That's lowercase e.
Okay.
And then after that, you'll have uppercase G.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you need to title that one ad hoc committees. And then part 1 would be the chairperson of the board may appoint.
Okay.
Got it?
That makes, yes, thank you.
And then we'll maintain the lettering as it was originally. So H is compensation. So the rest, from that point forward, it's unchanged from the original document.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and then we did add that non-WIB members may serve on the program and youth committee, business services, etc., versus shall.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. That is the entire recommended
Is there
change.
action required for that? Or we were fixing it so we can bring it to the executive committee?
Well,
What's
eventually
the workflow?
full board. So I was thinking that action would be required to recommend the board make these changes, and taking it to the executive committee would be more of a FYI, like we
Okay.
do. Some
Okay,
makes
so can we get a motion then to present this to the full WIB as updated?
I'll make the motion.
Contingent upon one final reread of the final document once Tara has that for us.
Right. So can you send that out before it goes to the agenda?
yes. Well,
To
Just-
get the motion passed though, is there a motion to present it to the WIB contingent upon, I guess, a last chance to say, wait, this wasn't quite right?
Right. Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
and just so you know,
We'll do that as a vote via email.
Right.
I would like to hear a confirmation as opposed to a silence equals approval.
and just so you guys know that when it goes to the WIB, it goes for a first reading, and then it will be voted upon at the subsequent full WIB meeting. So you will have time again. I mean, I will update this and get it back out to this committee for a vote to like double check that what we just did, but just so you know, there will be additional time for conversation. Okay.
Interesting.
Great. Okay, John.
Okay, then we'll skip down to part G of our agenda, which are the nominations.
Yeah.
So we have two what I'll call clusters here. One is a replacement for Andrew Aiello, who is rolling off the board. So he has appointed, or he has recommended someone from Tank to take his spot on the board, and that's Gina
Douthat.
Douthat? Okay.
Yes,
And-
Gina
And then
Douthat.
the other three will more discussion. So let's stick with Gina just on her own.
Yeah, Gina is the deputy general manager of Tank. So she is very involved in understanding the role of transit in workforce. She has a background in marketing and communications, so she really has an in-depth understanding of how to communicate specifically with the type of clients that whom Tank is serving. So often very similar individuals are the same individuals that we are serving through the Career Center often with our adult population or our youth population, people that depend on transit to get to their jobs. She has been with Tank. I don't know if it says on her application how long she's been with Tank, but I know she's been there since at least 2007. So I've been working with Gina since I worked at Triad. So she is, someone who knows the community, I would say, very well.
Okay.
I like everything on this attachment. She's looks to be analytical. She's involved with diversity and inclusion. She's part of the leadership group in Northern Kentucky. She seemed, and if she's Andy's general manager, deputy general manager, I'm sure he's vetted her quite a bit. I think this one's a go.
Mhm.
So do we need a motion on this, or do we just move it forward?
Well, I think what we did last time is we had you all vote with a motion to recommend to the full WIB adoption of the new member.
Okay, so just take a roll call vote of all in favor of recommending Gina to the full WIB.
I think we did like a motion and a second.
Okay.
All right, so I'll make the motion to recommend that we move her forward.
Second.
Okay, so let's keep that same order for voting. Dave?
Yes.
Yes.
Nick? John is a yes. Okay, the motion carries.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and then we have 3 other nominations. And if you recall, this is to fill Chris Friedel's spot, who has missed many meetings. So we need at least 2 labor members on the board. And we all have done a really good job and have gotten options here at this point. So I want to go through the nominations, and each person who brought this forward can bring some of the background of this person if you have it. And then I'll also, before we go into that, I'll talk about the options here in terms of, do we need 1? Can we do more than 1? To answer those questions. Oh, we could do more than 1.
So we currently have Chad Day.
Right.
He is labor.
Right.
But
there's a minimum for labor, not a maximum. And I think if the math I did last time with our current business quantity, a 3rd labor rep did not put us over.
that's a good point. And we are actually, because we've added a new business person from Carroll County, we do, well, I was thinking it would fix itself when we added our new labor person, but we should on the education and training side. We are getting a little bit low. Yeah.
Okay. The other point to note is Chad Day, who is on the board and active, his final term is June of next year.
Correct.
So 12 months from now, he must leave the board.
Correct.
So with that, let's just have a discussion about the 3 nominations. So the first in this is Jared T. So I brought this to the group. Jared represents the Ironworkers Local 44. So their offices are actually in, is it Hebron? Walton? and they are the Ironworkers local for all of the Cincinnati metro area. The original person I was introduced to and thought would be the right fit, he has a standing conflict with the date of the meeting. It sounds as though he was contacted a couple of years ago by the WIB to participate in this, the timing of the WIB meeting and the timing of his board or his trustees meeting, which is actually in Dayton, Ohio, always falls on the same Tuesday of the month. So he recommended Jared, who is himself, I'm going to screw the terminology up, but he has gone through apprenticeship himself, so he understands that piece and now is working for the organization. He's also an instructor, and he's a business agent. So that's the interface for businesses, whether they have a union or the workers are looking to organize. So certainly someone who, on paper, seems to understand the point of that. I would also say that Dave, who was my regional contact, was very enthusiastic about the Ironworkers being more involved. So he's very excited about the Career Center and wanting to do more on that side. So they are very interested in being a part of this. They do also know that they may not get voted in this cycle, but that we have seats going down. So if we get into hard to make a decision, I certainly think they would not have their feelings hurt if we said, you can come on when, when Chad Day rolls off.
Okay. Do you want me to talk a little bit about Vicki Burling? You guys probably all know her also, but
Yeah.
or some of you. Vicki Burling is currently with the Building Industry Association of Northern Kentucky, specifically serving as the administrator for their Insweiler Institute, which is a registered apprenticeship program in construction trades. So she previously was with Northern Kentucky University, and when she was with NKU, she served on the WIB at that time. So Dave, that's why I'm assuming that you know her.
Oh, right. I know Vicki very well.
I figured. She's very interested in getting re-engaged in a formal way with the WIB. We interact with her quite a bit in her role with Grow. And so, we're already working with her, but she had expressed interest through the staff, through Tony Sloan, and I think actually maybe Jason as well, about getting re-engaged as a member. And so when this came up, she would fall more under the joint labor management apprenticeship program classification. That does qualify based on our reading and WIOA for the labor role. And, I think she would be quite active. But I also can see, just in terms of strategy, I think she would be very willing to be helpful either way. I did let her know that we were purposefully trying to get a number of nominations for this particular position, and I appreciated her sort of flexibility as we went through this process, and she was just like, okay, great, just, let me know. So that's where we are.
So I have some questions, but do you want to just have everybody go through their candidates and then we answer all the questions all at once, or do you
That'd be great. I think it helps us then understand how to take the answers in context.
Right. Okay. All right. So, Tara, were you complete?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I reached out to a gentleman named Brian Boozman, and he's with SCANSA. SCANSA is a business and construction skilled trades organization that interfaces with clients across Northern Kentucky and Greater Cincinnati. Brian is responsible for business development and client relationships, primarily in project-oriented activities. He does have decision-making capability inside his inside his inside his company. He's active from a business side, primarily. He's a member with the Chamber, the Covington Business Council, a number of different boards. He's active both in Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati, and also Dayton. He does have a strong focus on diversity and inclusion inside that construction pillar. Very committed to that, and actually has several direct reports to him that focus on disadvantaged and minority youth. So very active on that. From a working side, Navigo and Youth Build and probably Life Learning Center utilize SCAMS's opportunities for job placement quite a bit. So he's got a good record with them. He is excited about the opportunity. I think he would probably fit in with everybody else. He understands that it's a selection process. And he would be able to start in September. He is going to be out of the office for about a month and a half, starting in July. So his first opportunity to rejoin would be end of August, probably beginning of September, though. So I think that's it. I did talk to some of the people that had worked with his group and himself and his direct reports in the past, and got a lot of really good positive feedback. He is a younger guy. So Nick, he looks about your age. So good to have somebody other than the old guys there. So anyway.
Okay.
I do want to feedback on Vicky though. I actually was surprised to see this because I thought she was already on the board. I thought I'd seen her at some previous meetings at the WIP. I don't know if she was at a guest or maybe I'm getting some GROW meetings mixed up. So I already thought that she was involved. My concern with Vicky is that primarily she's always been involved in the education side of the business. When I met her, she was with NKU, and before she was with, I think, Thomas More, even before NKU. She moved over to Sullivan inside the education sector, and then moved into this role at the BIA. I wonder how long she's going to be associated with the BIA. She moves often. Within the 10 years that I've known her, she's had 3 or 4 roles. So if this was the case and she left the BIA, let's say within a year or two, does that preclude her being in this role?
I guess it would depend on, where she went afterwards, because I would say that depending on the board member, it kind of varies. Recently, which I was going to bring up, it's not an action item, but later, which was that Carissa Schutzman has left Thomas More, and she started her own company, Workforce by Design. And I think what I was going to talk to you all about was, it seems in that particular case that even though that she's no longer with Thomas More, her background, her experience, her expertise, and the work that she's going to be doing consulting for other companies, I would think would allow her to remain on the board, because that work is going to be, it's really about her, right? Rather than about Thomas More in that case. So it would seem like she could stay on. But I think maybe in the case of Vicky, it would seem like this position on the board is really related to her connection with this arrangement that the Insweiler Institute has and its connections to the construction and trades, so I'm not sure if I can answer your question in a clean way, because I feel like it kind of depends on the individual and how they are coming to the board. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that's just sort of what I'm seeing.
Yeah. When I left Toyota, I had to reapply to the WIB when I started my consulting business. And so but again, I was in the kind of business broad category. And so I think Carissa probably falls under the same kind of process that I utilize. In this case, though, I think the nominee has to be tied to that segment pretty clearly.
Great.
So I think I'm agreeing with what you said, Tara. So we should think about that also.
Okay.
I've got a question about this segment and the specifics of who the person is representing it. So as I listen to your introduction for Brian, Dave, this almost seems like he should be in the business committee.
I don't disagree with that. What I thought I heard us say is that we didn't have to have somebody that was deliberately tied to the union or to the trade directly,
Correct.
in a union function or a labor consideration. And I'd always, frankly, everybody that we've had that's been in the labor union, whether it's the IBEW or electrical or skilled trades or iron workers or whatever, we've always had trouble with them being engaged with the actual focus of the WIB. It's just never worked out. And we've blamed it on crossing the river. We've blamed it on not being involved with the hiring process or not focusing with training. So I think that we have to think about all of that. And I thought that when we talked about this earlier, in the very beginning of this dialogue, we agreed that someone that had the passion and the drive and the business relationships inside that industry would fill the spot. So that's why I bring him forward.
So let me respond to that just briefly.
Sure.
When we talked about that at I think it was 2 meetings ago, that conversation was centered around the individual at Messer that you were thinking of talking to, but he was the head of training. So in that case, it was someone who's working directly with individuals looking to get into that profession and more hands-on.
That's true.
So in that case, I think this certainly applies because we're trying to encourage labor as a career pathway, and therefore, how do we make sure we're getting labor connected to those individuals and vice versa?
Mhm.
So that was, I see that a little bit different in this case, but I don't disagree that it matters a whole lot more about who the person is than what logo is on their shirt.
Yeah.
Because if it's the right organization, but that person's not involved, then that organization's not there either.
Yeah,
So-
I agree completely. I agree with what you said. And John, you're correct. When we were talking about the gentleman from Messer, he was directly hands-on. So in reaching out past the Messer, that's where the Scansa group came forward. Okay.
But I'm excited about him though. I mean, the way you talked about him, and obviously Scansa's a great company. They do large projects. It's a national organization. So
Right. Mhm.
this would not be a bad company to be engaged with at the WIB level. So
Yeah.
so with that in mind, would we instead perhaps consider nominating that for a business seat? And so we have him involved, and then, I guess I don't know how to take your concerns with Vicky, because I think if you leave the organization, you're not on the WIB anymore, right? Because I had to also reapply when I left Han.
Right.
And it wasn't because I made a new company, but it was because I left and I needed to therefore reapply to where I was presently working.
Right. So what is your question to me? What I was saying about Vicky, John, was that she moves along. She has moved around quite a bit. Okay. And if this role is tied to the business trades, based on her career, she usually ends up in an educational field. Okay.
Message.
That's what I'm saying, really. And if we're looking to fill a specific spot for a labor type of position and not a general spot as a business,
Mhm.
I'm worried because it historically has been a hard position to fill. Okay.
Mhm.
That's all I'm saying. We love working with Vicki. We have a number of grants through Navigo with her and with this group. We utilize their space all the time for a number of different kinds of meetings. So we're very active and appreciative.
Mhm.
I'm just worried that if she was to leave this position, we would again find ourselves in a hole without a labor representative. That's all
Okay.
I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about this other gentleman from the ironworkers? It's been a long time since I saw an ironworkers representative actually in this area. And here in Kentucky, they're not the same as millwrights. Is that correct? Or is millwright and ironworker the same?
No, they're different. So a millwright is technically someone who would break down and transport and reassemble.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more like an assembly trade.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas ironworkers is much more about welding.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it at that. I don't
Yeah.
want to get in the weeds. You don't really want to know the weeds there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
In Georgia, the ironworkers and millwrights were together in
Okay.
unions.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're certainly on most every construction project downtown.
Okay.
So anything that has, several stories, there are iron workers working on those projects.
Yeah. I will say the one thing I like about all these candidates is that they at least originate in Northern Kentucky.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that Jared lives in Northern Kentucky. Is that true?
I do not know that. I think
Okay.
his phone number is a 51. No, yeah, his cell phone is a 513, but
But
that's
he reports to work in Northern Kentucky, so that's a good thing.
yeah.
A good thing. That's been a problem with our other candidates in the past.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. Do we have room for more business people? I mean, would we make more room for business people in one or two labor, or do we go out of the percentage criteria depending on how we select?
You-
So,
I don't
so
have that spreadsheet. Are you doing some math, Tara?
I've been doing a little bit of math while I've been also listening. If we keep the current number for labor, so we have Chad Day and Chris Friedel, so we have 2 people. So if we keep that and we add, so right now, so if we do nothing extra, right? So we have 2 people for labor and we maintain the exact number of business, we have 54.29% business, and we have exactly 20% in that education and trades, education and training rather category. So that's like Randy Poe, Katrina, Dave Schroeder, Alicia, Shannon, Starkey Taylor. They're all in that same category. If we decided that we wanted to add, say, for example, Brian under business, and then we would have 20 people in business, which would take us to 55.56%. We would be under 20%, which is another requirement in that education and training category. But if we added an extra person, like for example, if we took Jared and Vicki, for example, and then we would have 8 people in that category, we would have 21.6% in the education and training category and 54% in the business category.
Okay, so our options are we replace Chris with one person.
Correct.
And that person, to be true labor representative, would either be Vicky or Jared. So
Mhm.
the other option is we nominate all three
Yes.
with N as business and Jared and Vicky in the labor category.
Correct. You can take one or three.
So rather than, do we have to do yes, no voting? Can we do a preference to see? I don't know how to, I'm not used to multiple choices on this board.
I mean, you could have,
Warm body. Can we bring the warm body in here? Yes.
I mean, do you guys want to do kind of a quick, like, who's your favorite and sort of see, you know, you could do it that way and just kind of get a feel for top choice, just to get a feel of how much consensus there is. You can email me. Want to keep the side?
How about we go around the room and just talk about how you would vote?
Okay.
With a quick rationale, so just a minute and a half kind of a thing. So Nick, because we've been dominating this conversation, and these are people you're not as familiar with, why don't we start with you? I'd love to hear a fresh perspective.
Sure. I think all three are very impressive individuals in their own right, and I'd be happy to have all of them on the board. I will say that Jared is a very intriguing candidate because in the several years I've been on the board, we haven't really had an active voice from traditional labor present. And certainly with Jared's, credentials, it looks like we would have that opportunity for a traditional labor active voice and presence. So at a minimum, I would like to get him on board. I think it would be a valuable diversity of thought. But with that said, we have three excellent candidates that are willing to come on board. And if there's any value in bringing those folks in the loop, I hate saying no to qualified folks who want to join up with us.
Okay. Dave?
So I like the 1 to 3 option, either or. I feel the same as Nick on Jared's opportunity. I do think from a pure labor representative, he fits the criteria regardless of the other two. I do think that we need to think long-term about the board. So having 3 capable folks with the potential of somebody like a Brian that could scoot between a number of different committees one way or another or add value makes a lot of sense. And again, my concern about Vicky, she would also have the ability to scoot between groups, whether it be an educational focus or a labor focus or even a business side, because she has been active in business relationships also. So I would tend to go with 3 rather than 1, but certainly if it was 1, I agree with Nick that Jared seems to make the best sense.
Okay. I'm really not that different, so I'll just make the one note, which is with Vicky, she is already very involved in what we do. So whether she's formally on the board or not, I don't believe will change her involvement in the work she does and the impact she has. So if we had to make the tough choice between, the 3 and 1, and we had questions about Vicky, but really wanted Brian, then, I think it's, my feeling is she's a bit along for the ride here for that to work, but I don't think that's a harmful thing at all. And I'm reluctant just to do 1 because I believe Brian sounds like an outstanding individual, has the right mindset of what we want the board to look like and behave like moving forward. And that's another great company to have involved. So I'm leaning more towards the 3 as well, but I'm not opposed to the 1. But it sounds like we're all saying 3 is good. So why don't we just let's do a motion to recommend. We'll just do as a group recommendations. So can I get a recommendation to present all three for recommendation to the board?
Can I ask a question before we go forward, just to check the math again?
Uh,
Tara, if we have all three, did you say that we're at 54% and at 21, or are we at 19? I just want to make
Right.
sure if we take all
Yeah.
three.
Yeah, so let me see here. So I added one in the blue category, which is education and training, which would indicate that we would be taking both Vicky and Jared. And then I added one in the business category, which would be putting Brian in that category. And with those changes, that leaves 54%, just over 54% in the business category and 21.62% in the training and education category. And to John's point earlier, I will say, since we know that Chad Day only has one more year on the board, you know, that does kind of set us up where we're kind of doing a little bit of that legacy planning in advance, where, you know, we wouldn't necessarily have to, you know, rush or scramble to figure that out. I mean, we're just kind of doing it now. So I will say eventually, if we had any other vacancies in that area, I could see adding somebody maybe from Jefferson Community and Technical College that serves like Owen, Gallatin, Carroll counties down there, versus, you know, as a complement to the group. But anyway, I think this is fine for now.
okay.
Great.
So, John, you made the recommendation.
A request for a motion.
So I'll yes on that.
I requested to someone bring the motion forward. So you or Nick need to be the first for the motion, and the other one needs to be the second.
Okay.
So move to advance the 3 nominations.
Okay, and then second.
You guys have all the hard work today. Okay, all in favor? Or individually? So aye. Okay, easy enough. We're small.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. And then with this, I think, Nick, you need to leave, right?
Yes, sir. I have to get on the road right now, but it's been great seeing you all today, and have a great one.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks a
Take care.
lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, if you all have a minute, we could go over this dashboard if you would like, so that you can see what you think about it, and if this is something that you want to use in the future, or if you want us to keep working on how to show you who all is on the board. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you. So let me see if that is going to work. Okay. Let me see everything on your screen. Okay. It's fine. Nope, that did not work. Hold on. Screen.
You know, I was going to say, and I decided not to say it because we were recording at the time. We were still recording, but I think we need a 15-year-old on the board to handle all the IT stuff.
You know, I try, sometimes I do all right, and then other times less so. Okay, so I'm trying to, okay, can you see this?
Yeah.
Great. There should be a lot of blue, a little bit of orange. It should say Workforce Investment Board in the middle.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so David made this for us, and it is meant to be an interactive snapshot of the board. So you will see along the left-hand side the names of the 4 committees: Business Services, MBO, Program and Youth, and executive. And so just to get us acquainted with how this works, I'm going to start with MBO. So if I touch the blue rectangle, then nothing happens. Awesome. There we go. So I touched the blue rectangle, and now you can see not the names, but the employers or organizations that each member comes from, and then what business category. So as you can see, advanced manufacturing, IT, business, finance, and transportation and logistics. So if we wanted to do that, for example, we could go down here to this pink bar at the very bottom that says committee details, and we can actually see that for the full width. So you can see all the members along this section that's moving here. We can see the grant, and then at the top we can see some details. So for business services, we've got 62% from the business community. From executive committee, we're at 100%. I do want to talk to you about what I need to do for Carissa. But we just for now put her under business, which would make executive committee comprised of 100% business. Same for MBO, because Dave, we have you under business. Program and youth, this is where things have gotten a little tricky. So we are at 38% business, 8% education and training, 8% government and economic development, and then 6 people or 46% workforce representatives. So that's where, and that I guess has been like that since before I started. It's just that we've just had all these questions about exactly what the makeup was supposed to be. So, you know, now with the change of the bylaws, eventually that will be okay. And then for the grand total, you'll see right now it's showing 66% of the group is business, but I think that, well, it's not going to show the labor person being replaced, so that's going to change. And then 11% education and training under the full web, 8, that's the section that will be fixed when we add our labor person. That doesn't look quite right, actually. And 8% government and economic development and 16% workforce. So I'm going to need to see exactly, if you look here, you can find out more about that. So let's see if we can. But in general, does this help you, or is this still very confusing?
My question is, what are we trying to solve with this? So whenever you're
Yeah, well,
new, it's because something with what you have isn't serving your needs.
yeah, so the feedback previously had been that our array of spreadsheets was making it a little hard to see really the makeup of the committees in a quick way. So this is.
But from whom? Who was saying committee makeup was a thing we wanted to see?
Well, I thought you guys wanted, I mean, I thought the MBO wanted to be able to kind of quickly look at what the makeup of the committees was. So this wouldn't necessarily replace the spreadsheets, but would be one way that you could kind of quickly see what the makeup was.
Okay.
You know, I know you're also looking at attendance, but I certainly didn't want to go down this path of having it graphically in this format with attendance before I got feedback on just the structure in general versus just having a spreadsheet. Because at the last meeting, everybody was kind of low on the spreadsheets being confusing to look at.
the attendance spreadsheets for sure.
Yeah.
That was hard to read. There was a lot packed in there.
Yeah.
So that is a challenge, and this doesn't yet address that because it's not about attendance.
Right.
But this to me, this is showing me committee level percentages of who they represent, but
Yeah.
we really only care about that at the board level. So I think if you're going to do this, if I were making my ideal dashboard for the WIB to help the WIB, it would show what the requirements are
Right.
and where we currently stand.
Yeah.
So like let's just take business services, for example, that committee, that's not really relevant again. So if that were business representatives and that
Sure.
showed greater than 50%, and then we see just a graph of what that is, we sort of know where we're at.
Right.
And
Sure. So if you
also
needed
when people's terms expire and which
Yep.
term that they're on.
Yep.
So
Okay.
show like
Sorry.
how many business representatives term expire in the next cycle,
Yeah.
and which of those are on the last, what's it called?
Yeah. Their last term.
Last term.
They-
Thank you. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah. No. I mean,
So you're still sharing your screen, Tara.
okay. I'm gonna pull up the other spreadsheet.
Okay.
This is just the best way to share it, and it'll
You don't
just
get to use the Johnson in your email address?
I chose not to because when I was with United Way, I had Johnson-Gnome in my email address, and it was constantly a problem to try to explain to people what the email address was. How did you spell it? Gnome is like the hardest name to spell with only 4 letters that exist on this planet. So it was just going to be easier to just have Tara.gnome. So, and they weren't going to let me have a hyphen in the email address. So then that was going to be even more, confusing.
Okay. Dave, what were you saying about the 15-year-old that we need?
Right.
Right. Yeah. So here's the member analysis grid. Now, okay, so this, let me make sure that this translated. So yeah, so let me put it back. So this is gonna look like it's out of order, but I need to add Lisa Morris in here still. So it's gonna go from 17 to 19, but that's on purpose so that your numbers are correct. So right now, and then this should be 7. This is how I was doing our math a minute ago. So I'm just putting it back. So this is the current makeup of the group. So, so right now we're at 20% and 54%. If you go over here, we have a number of people in the business community. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whose third term expires next year. One of those though is Andy Aiello, who chose to vacate his term a year early, and his last meeting will be tomorrow. So other than Andy, we've got, let's see, line 24. So Michelle Sesteric, actually, which I didn't realize. And then let's see, 2 down from Michelle is Dana Dobbs. So her term will end. No, I'm sorry. That's just her second term.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see, line 30. Christy Henry, and the last two, Michelle Tyson and Rhonda Whitaker. So that kind of tells me, if both of the Michelles are going to be timing out next year, that's going to leave a lot of openings in our leadership.
Mhm.
So something to consider there. Carissa, I guess I will get her application together for the next committee meeting. But we had, as a staff, had been hoping that the MBO would agree for her to move forward as the next Business Services Committee chair. She is interested in that position. But we had been hesitant because she was with a university, and we felt like the Business Services Committee chair should be someone on the business category.
Mhm.
But if you feel comfortable with that now that she has moved to starting her own business, it seemed like that would be a natural way to proceed forward with her chairing that committee.
I have no objections.
Okay.
What is her new company? What is the mission of the company?
It's called Workforce by Design.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is this LLC that she started is going to be doing workforce HR type consulting for businesses.
Okay. Yeah, I think the more that we can get traditional business people involved in the educational side and traditional educational people in business, that cross-pollination is really super important, because right now, as hard as we try, we still have a business pillar and we still have an education pillar that sometimes don't trust each other. So Carissa could help bridge that gap with her background in both education and now in business. So I don't have a problem with it at all.
Okay. Great. That's for 4. Looks like Janet Harris' third term will end in 2021, as will Ryan Henson's. I'm not really sure what to do about Ryan Henson, because he is the logical representative from the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation.
He's always been on the web. He's been on the web forever.
Right.
I mean, do they actually follow a term limit?
I need to look into. I asked that question when I actually first started, because of, people like, say, for example, Dr. Figueroa. I mean, if he's willing to serve on the board, would we not want the president of our community and technical college to be on the board, like always? And the answer was sort of like, I don't know. So.
But Ryan is part of the business, not the business partners, but the partnerships, the consortiums
Right.
that fall under the career center, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. He's a employee or appointed to that role. My understanding was that role was always, there was no term limit to that role.
Like an ex officio position, basically.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to kind of investigate. That would make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the adult ed role. Natalie Cummins left that position, so Danita had to replace her. But,
right.
And it looks like this version of this document doesn't have Danita's stuff updated, but it's fine. We know she just started.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems kind of crazy that we would somehow have a term limit for somebody who really, by the nature of what they do, really needs to be included.
Yeah, I think you're headed in the right direction. And just so I don't lose the train of thought, the dialogue about Fernando is a good one, and one that I think that we have to take care with. Historically, what I wouldn't want to have happen is, well, let me rephrase that. I think you're absolutely right. If we have a president of a university that wants to be a part and is committed to holding up their own in the WIB, I think
Mhm.
that's a good thing. What I think in the past has sometimes happened is that they start to delegate that role to maybe a provost or the next in command, and then it starts to get watered down. So
Right.
I would welcome language that would keep people like Fernando on the board in an evergreen process, as long as it's that, as long as they fulfill the commitment,
Sure. Right. That they actually are still participating. Yeah.
participating and engaged, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I will investigate. Can further investigate, specifically for Ryan as somebody who's required to be represented.
Right.
What we, maybe there's already. I mean, we're already looking at the bylaws. Actually, that's a good point. So I'll try to look at it in preparation for resending you the draft, and I'll just include some notes about what that might look like.
Okay.
If we feel like we need additional provisions of that kind, since we're already talking about the bylaws, anyway.
Yeah, and then in looking at the list, I see where you have Ryan on there, but Connie probably falls in the same category.
Yes, she does.
In fact,
Yeah.
when I work with the Lexington WIB, Connie is there. I mean,
Yeah, she is.
yeah,
Yeah.
so kind of interesting, frankly.
Because
So
she has the same role for both of our regions.
she is.
Yeah,
In
Yeah.
fact, I think she's actually got 3.
she does. Yeah, she does.
Okay. So anyway, I think those folks are evergreen.
Okay.
In some
Maybe I'll
kind of-
reach out to some of my colleagues, some other WIB directors, and just ask them how do they, do they have some sort of special call out in their bylaws, or do they just have those people evergreened, or what do they do?
Yeah.
But yeah, I will look into that. So this document hopefully remains helpful, because this is showing you, the makeup of, where people are geographically. And there's still a lot of excitement in Carroll County about having a Carroll County person on the board. They're actually going to have an article about it in the local Carrollton newspaper. So it's kind of cool that that happened, just so you know.
That is very good. That is very cool.
Yeah. And she is going to join the Business Services Committee, by the way.
Good. I hope
Yeah.
the WIB will meet their expectations. It's a long way for service sometimes.
Yeah. But the Carrollton office of the Kentucky Career Center is actually really engaged in that community. So I think that they'll find it, I think it'll be more challenging for a county like Pendleton County, where they might not see the services firsthand as readily, because they tend to be more virtual in nature. But with a lot more, they have dedicated staff in Carrollton, so I'm hoping that they'll feel like that's a good connection.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you all have any other our time's about up, but did you have any other questions?
The only thing that I wanted to bring up is on the dashboard that you had, Tara.
Yeah.
I think the important part for me is similar to what John said, is I want to make sure that the overall makeup of the board is correct, from a percentage basis, and that we're meeting the legal requirement. When we start to look at the makeup of each committee, I kind of think that that's the role of the MBO, to actually dig into the weeds and look at the spreadsheet like we just did.
Okay.
But if you want to move forward on this, the only thing that I think is really absolutely needed is need to understand what the standard that we're trying to achieve is, so that if businesses have to be over 51%, that standard is somewhere listed in this dashboard, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. That's good feedback.
My blunt recommendation, my blunt feedback is David is often create something that's looking for a problem because he's excited about this stuff. And I just think this isn't really adding value. Sorry, I guess I should have
You're fine.
qualified that there. So
There we go.
I think if anything, just a cleanup of the Excel would be fine
Okay.
as a starting point, because we've sort of got this legacy that we keep adding and plugging in. We've created a Frankenstein of Excel files. So, one document that has the attendance tracked on there, one document that shows the breakdown by county, by what term. So it's just sort of our one document that lets us get all our answers. But that can be multiple tabs. We don't need to overwhelm. There's sort of what I normally do is I'll have a data sheet and then I create tabs that are giving me the information in a way that's more visually appealing or powerful. So that big spreadsheet we have, if you want to keep expanding to the right with presence or not presence, final term, et cetera, then you're just kind of creating a tab for what do we want to look at. And if we have questions about, well, why is that not a compliance or where are the risks? We can go back and look at the source data in detail.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. To John's point, when we have a document that tries to encompass everything and there's a slight error, let's say somebody fat fingers something, it's almost impossible to find that mistake when there's so much data. The singular tabs are a lot easier to problem solve.
Yeah, I totally see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been in the process of updating everything for fiscal year 21, just regarding just sort of everything, right? So we have the way all the documents have been saved from a legacy standpoint is that we have new folders every time a new fiscal year starts. So for easy reference. So I'll work on getting the member analysis grid and the attendance grid into one thing with multiple tabs for the future. So definitely concerned about the attendance of a couple folks, but in terms of how effective trying to talk to them about that would be, I'm not really sure. I mean, what do you all normally do if there's somebody, say there is somebody that, typically is good, but they, start, if they're like just overextended, what do you normally do? Is that something like the board members take care of? Is it something I would take care of? I'm just sort of curious how you normally handle that.
In the past, Barb normally took care of those kind of conversations.
Okay.
I don't know, and I don't need to know who you're talking about at this point, but I think right now would be an easy kind of conversation to have in light of business now starting to restart and finding out if the past attendance problems was tied to some particular hardship, that they were having.
Sure.
And if the answer is no, that they've lost the passion or their role has changed or something, it's probably a pretty easy conversation to have. So I would only recommend that if you do it, or if you want to delegate it, or somebody in the MBO does it, that we should do it soon, because the window is good now that we're trying to get back to some type of business as normal aspect.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just want to make sure that I was on the same page with you guys. I'm happy to have that conversation, but just want to make sure that there was a normal, then trying to follow the normal. Occasionally.
I think if you're comfortable having that conversation, by all means, do that.
Okay.
If there's a strong relationship with someone that may help, then we can certainly leverage that as well.
Sure. The one person in particular is somebody that I know and have known for a while, like before this.
Perfect.
position.
So
So
you
yeah,
check both boxes then.
yeah, so it's no problem. One last thing, and then we'll say bye. I found out yesterday that Jason Ashbrook is going to be leaving us. And, you know, I'm not super surprised. Never easy to say goodbye to somebody that's such an integral part of the team. But, you know, I kind of had a feeling about 6 months ago that that would probably be the case.
Yeah.
So he's got a great opportunity. He's going to help with some reorganization of the Butler County, I think it's like Butler and Warren County, maybe WIB in Ohio. So I was curious from your standpoint, you know, at some point I'll let the board know about that, but I just didn't know if there were any expectations. I always like to know if there's some sort of expectation that the board has about a certain thing. It's just sort of nice to, otherwise I'm happy to make it up as I go. But, you know, do you feel like the board is going to want to know that? I was just going to kind of let the executive committee know tomorrow, or, you know, just sort of more like as in FYI, because he does have relationships with, you know, a number of people just because of being a staff person for a while, for like a long time. But I didn't know if there was anything else. And just in case you were wondering, my intention is to leave that position open for 3 to 6 months and to really do a full assessment of exactly what that work looks like and exactly what we would be wanting if we were to replace that position rather than just rehiring. So it's not going to be open for a while.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's an interesting comment, and be curious to hear what you find out about that as you move forward. As far as notification, that's executive committee is where you would do that. I don't think the full WIB needs to know about that specifically.
Okay. Cool. That's what my gut was saying, but just thought I'd ask since you guys. So.
Sure.
Cool. Appreciate the feedback.
All right, great. Well, thanks a lot. Sorry I was like traffic jam between here and the coffee maker. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you all very much.
Well,
Take
All right, thank you.
See ya. Take care.
Bye-bye.